By the way, this is all a surprise. It wasn't planned. Know that you guys are here is just a blessing. But the idea is that maybe I'll send you the titles of all of them. So
Yeah.
maybe you could use them.
Yeah.
But the idea was, and I told Mario, we all run a business.
Yeah.
People don't know us, and these talks will help them. But not just help them. I wanted to help like the youth
Yeah.
and younger generation,
Because it
and
was children
people coming
raising
into the
children.
business that maybe didn't have that.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. So I'm part of these car meetup groups and stuff like that.
Oh no way!
And the biggest one in Sacramento is called Euro Sunday. It's
Okay.
all the European cars. And when I first got my car, I'm new to the scene.
Yeah.
No one knew who I was.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to these different places. I didn't know anybody. I felt out of place. And over time, I'm in primary. So I've learned how to network.
Yeah.
And so now I know the guy
That runs
actually,
them.
that runs.
Ooh,
the
that's
biggest thing.
awesome.
I've gotten really close to him.
Yeah.
That's why all the In-N-Out burgers you guys have here,
Yeah.
between here and Sacramento, his tree company maintains all the palm trees.
Get out of here.
That's why I'm taking pictures.
And sending it
And
to
I'm
him.
sending to him. I said,
That's
"Dude, I'm
cool.
here." But his son committed suicide.
Oh
So,
man.
so long story short, what happened was I wanted to do a car meetup at my office, right, to get some attraction.
Absolutely.
And so
Yeah.
what
I'm
happened?
still
And so
sipping.
what happened
It's
was
still warm.
I eventually got a chance to meet him because of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And he asked me. He said, "Hey man, I've seen the car. Would you mind bringing it to the California
Yeah.
auto show?"
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, sure." And it actually won the. It had the most votes.
Really?
And this is against McLaren's, all those.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so after what happened was, we had this long conversation. Come to find out, his son committed suicide.
So there's a reason.
And shortly after that, I connected him with a group called Impact SAP that deals with that. They just got a grant for suicide awareness.
Ooh, that's good.
And since he's been dealing with this trauma, it's only
Yeah.
been a couple of years since he's
Yeah.
passed. So now we're trying to put together car meetups where we bring suicide awareness, because all these young kids are coming to these shows wanting to have these cars that they can't afford. And we got all these successful men and women that are
Yeah.
there. Said, "Hey, why don't we?" And it's giving him an opportunity to heal,
Yes, coaching and speaking about.
because he feels like he wasn't able to be there for his son.
Oh my gosh.
So now he can be there for other
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
which will hopefully help him heal.
Wow, that's awesome.
But it just goes to show how, it started off with just me wanting to go to these car meetups.
Yeah.
But how we never know how God has a plan for these things.
Make it
Sometimes
something
people
bigger.
may just look at it as a material thing.
Yeah.
But now I met this guy that his son just committed suicide, and now we're friends.
Oh my gosh. They've been telling me.
What?
I'm a very private person, by the way.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been.
The guy that got me into the cars is Adrian Anderson. You guys know Adrian under the Cornegay? Young guy. He went from 0 to $500,000 like within
In Bakersfield.
in Bakersfield.
The one that has a McLaren?
Yeah.
He got a McLaren.
They're a
Great
sweet
young
couple.
couple.
Great
Gotcha.
couple.
Gotcha.
So he came. You know how our uplines are. Don't buy nothing. Make sure you're bulletproof financially and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, right? And so that resonated with me for quite some time. But then when I told Adrian, I said, "Adrian, man, you should save your money. You're not there yet. You should, because he's a young kid. One child. So he said, and he started calling me Unc. He said, Unc, let me tell you why I bought this car. Because I guess when he played basketball in the neighborhood, and predominantly around a lot of African Americans, he said the only people that had those type of cars are athletes and drug dealers and rappers. So he said, okay, now I'm making about almost $500,000. I feel like
Yeah.
I wanted to buy this so that when I go play basketball in the neighborhood and the kids ask me what I do,
Great. That's a good tool.
I'm in financial services. You don't have to rap. You don't have to play basketball,
Yeah.
football, but you
Yeah.
can be like me.
Yeah.
So when he said that to me, that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
That's when I started asking my boys, "Hey, what kind of car should I get?" And like on my license plate now, it says 1TRSTGD. So I trust God.
Oh, nice.
And people always ask him, "What is
What
your
does it
license
mean?
plate? What
Yep.
is your license plate?"
It's a conversation starter.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially at the car meetups.
Yeah, it's funny. We watch the people like look at his license plate trying to figure out what it says.
So it's a good car, especially with like the other day I was driving my car. These kids in their parents' car was like,
Yeah.
rev it, and then but I know they get a chance to see their plates, so I want them to always not the car as being their main image, but the license plate as a message.
Wow, that's
But
awesome.
the car gets the attention
Right.
right away, and it leads to the plate.
Right. So you network a lot up there, man. Has
Try
it
to.
helped you in the business?
Yeah. I recruited a few people, a couple of younger guys though. Because they're younger.
Here, y'all can talk this conversation at Pioneer Chicken. Let's
Oh,
go.
okay.
Yeah. Well, Pioneer Chicken.
I thought we were already
Do
talking.
they have a mic? You give them the mic.
I told her.
Just in case they have something to say.
You
Just in
can.
case. No,
You know, I'm
no. The
the-
reason
I'm
why I'm
the-
asking you is
I have
because
to be the host.
I'm the opposite of you. So I wouldn't want somebody knowing what I have, because all my friends were bad. So
Yeah.
if you told them what you had, they were the type of people that would follow you, and
Well,
they
most of
wanted
my-
what you have.
Most of my friends are felons.
So one of them, it's a matter of fact, when I was younger, I had a Mustang, and I just threw it out there. Man, I wish I had some nice rims. Within a week, hey, I got you some rims. And I'm like, where'd you get them from?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I saw him on a car, and he told me the whole story, and he freaking jacked them, dude. He jacked the rims.
Oh wow.
So that's why now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, heck no. If I go to one of these... Okay, we ready? Oh, okay.
You
So,
got babies?
should I just get started?
Y'all are the
Okay.
y'all are the younger
He's been-
generation. We the old generation.
Hey, so I'll kick it off. Then. Yeah. She's gonna chime in though. She has the mic too. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we'll go over having a solid foundation for your family. So for example, I was talking to you, David, and I was telling you that I grew up, and growing up, I thought every family grew up with loving parents
Yeah.
that went to church, that just took care of them. And later, when I was growing up and I started going to middle school and high school, I started realizing that some of my friends didn't have a dad, or some of them didn't have a mom. One of them, this is the biggest shocker in my life, was one of them would cuss and say bad words to his parents. So I walked in and he invited me for lunch on summer, and I still remember, I'll never forget him. I went in, and his mom made him a sandwich, made me a sandwich, and he took a bite, and then he just let it out. You're, stupid and this and that, just bad words to his mom. And I looked at him, and it scared me. Like, why are you talking to your parents like that? It was just a normal thing. And then later, he said, well, she messed up on my sandwich. And so I, at my age, even today, I cannot see myself fussing at my parents. That respect is there. And luckily, I had my grandmother in my life, and that's why I wanted to kind of get you guys' opinion on where you guys are at. How would you guys help somebody that maybe has that, where they're cussing at a parent, or where's that foundation for you guys at this point in your life? And how did you set it up? Where did you start? What are the conversations you're having with your kids?
Well, I think it starts with just listen to that story. I know we're probably feeling sorry for the parent at this point.
Yes.
But then at the same time, I think it's also part of the parents' fault
Right.
that they allowed it to happen.
Right.
Because there's strong parents that would not allow it to happen.
Right.
But I think for us, it's our spiritual um, upbringing. Not we haven't. Well, I don't know about my wife. But have you been in church all your life?
No.
I haven't. I didn't receive Jesus until I was 22.
Okay.
And you can tell because up until 22, I was a train wreck. But the Bible has a lot of great instructions and images and stories
Right.
that can help a young family. But again, a lot of people may not be exposed to that.
So how did you change your foundation in your house? What conversations are you having with your kids?
I don't think it's necessarily conversations. I think your children learn from your example.
Okay.
Right? So it's the environment in the home. It's how do you talk at home? What is your posture like at home? Are you the same outside of the house as you are in the house? Right? Kids always say, my kids don't cut up, or they don't act bad when they're out, or they don't do that. Or how are they acting when they're at home? So, I think what we did, or just the example that we set in the home, is what our kids have to follow. Is what they see, right? We're loving towards one another. We don't yell at one another. We don't cuss at one another. Like, we don't do those things, so they don't do those things. I think a lot of times children just mimic. So your friend in that situation with your friend, he had to have seen that somewhere
Absolutely.
to think that was okay to do,
Right.
right? So I mean, just thinking about that, like, where did he get that idea that it was okay to do? Is that how his dad talked to him?
You know what? I never asked them. But now that you mention it, I think that's probably what happened. And I was so young that I was afraid to ask them.
Yeah,
And it ran my mind, like, what if I did that?
yeah.
And if right away I answered it, I would probably get smacked.
We would've
So
got a
I would
spanking.
never
I
do
was
it.
scared of my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we would have got a spanking.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about that now because when kids were playing, when Sam used to play basketball, we'd be at the basketball game, and the kids are up in the stand and they're like cussing or whatever, and I'm like, hey, watch your mouth. But when we were kids and we were growing up, we would never cuss in front of an adult,
Yeah.
even if we didn't know them. Like, we would be out and like adults would come around, even if we were cussing, right? We were kids,
Yeah.
you would say things you weren't supposed to say. But when adults came around, you'd be like,
Yeah.
because you were scared of adults. Kids today aren't scared. They're not
Right.
scared of adults.
Well, but at the same time,
yeah,
we're in an environment now. If you try to discipline your kids,
yeah.
you'll go to jail.
You're right.
So I
Right.
think that's part of the reason is now a lot of parents are scared of their kids.
Right.
Where the good old fashioned parents, I know when I grew up in my neighborhood, the parents across the street would take a switch off the tree, and if you did something wrong, it didn't matter if you were their child or not.
Right.
But in the neighborhood had that understanding
Right.
that, okay, what did you just say to me? You're
Right.
gonna get smacked for that.
I think
Right.
that there's a lot of differences in generations where, just to piggyback on what they're saying, I'm not saying we were very spiritual, but we grew up in a household where God was definitely the center of our family. Not that we go to church every Sunday or
Right.
we prayed every single day, but it was definitely down. So I grew up in a household where first they'll hit and ask questions later. So even for me to think about cussing,
Yeah.
I'd be in big trouble.
Yep.
Let alone do it.
Right.
And then I remember, just like David said, is in elementary, I know I'm aging myself, this would never happen today, but I remember in elementary, the principal had a paddle right next to his room. And
Oh,
if,
yeah.
if
Wow.
you were out of hand, they had permission to spank you.
I
Right.
got hit
Yeah.
by a teacher because I skipped school when
my
I was
God.
So,
in the 5th grade, I think.
Oh my
so
God.
they say that it takes 4 generations to break that curse.
Yeah.
So I don't know if, just like Shanika said, more taught than taught, where
Yeah.
maybe that your friend saw it from his dad, and
Yeah.
then the dad from his grandfather, and on
Right.
and on. But hopefully somebody could break that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that I'm older and I look at that situation, I go back and I'm like, what could I have done different? How could I have helped them? That conversation that you guys just talked about, I would have probably have done that now.
Mm.
And then on
You
top
didn't
of
know.
that, I didn't know. Yeah. So I think that if somebody's going through a situation like that, it's got to be somebody that knows them that has to correct that situation.
Yeah.
Correct.
That would be very important.
That's huge.
Otherwise, that would be more of a friend than anything.
That has the confidence and the conviction
Exactly. Yes.
to do
Yes.
so.
And then also, the perfect life I'm painting you. One thing I didn't notice is that we were poor growing up. So to me, marbles was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
you bought me marbles.
Yeah.
We used to play marbles. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I used to love
You want the
marbles.
big one?
So
With the
my dad
colors.
would get up
Yeah.
and go to work, and then my mom would stay home. So, again, now that I have children, our foundation is they can't cuss, they obviously. But one of the main things I think is just being polite.
Yeah.
If you go to a restaurant and somebody puts something on the table,
Thank
hey, can you please say thank you?
Yeah.
And if they don't say it, I'll look at them and say, can you please say thank you when he comes?
Yeah.
And I think that's also another area where, where it's disappearing. You don't see too many people that are polite nowadays.
Yeah.
Younger generation is different, but I think that it starts at home. Shanika, you mentioned it.
Yeah.
If you really are the example, if you're like the hard copy, and if they're looking at that, that's how they're gonna become.
Yes.
So that's why I even when they're not around, it doesn't matter if I say thank you 100 times.
Yeah.
You could have put 100 things on the table. I'm gonna say it, thank you 100 times.
Yeah.
To the point where they don't even acknowledge my thank you anymore.
Right.
But the idea is there of being polite.
And valuing people like
Yes.
people, like they
Yes.
should be valued.
Absolutely.
Versus what they have, what they own, valuing them as God's
Right.
people.
Right.
And I don't think that's really exemplified too often.
Right. Right.
You know?
And in the area of love, like my dad didn't give me a lot of love, so my mom did that. So it was a pretty good balance.
Yeah.
But growing up, a man sees a man not give love, it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, that's how men are supposed to be.
Yeah.
So again, how do I want to change that in my generation? Easily. I have a son, and I hug him, and I tell him I love you. So it's that way it changes.
Yeah.
And, it starts disappearing where one day he's going to do that with his children,
Yeah.
right?
Well, one thing I'll tell you though, Alex, is that at some point though, right now, because how old is your son?
4 years old.
Yeah, okay, so you're in the easy years. Those years are gonna, when they start getting older, they're gonna challenge you,
Okay.
and your ability to still continue to love them. It's going to be challenged because I
Okay.
know my sons are a little older, and when they're young, like right now, I just saw a picture of my grandbaby. And
Okay.
she's so cute. She's so she can't do nothing.
Right.
We'll give her the world. But at some point in life, now we're gonna have to discipline, and that's the tough things I think for some parents is
Yes.
to be able to discipline. Because again, when they're kids, it's easy just to love them; they're a bundle of joy.
Right.
But then when these kids start growing up and they start getting out in the world and they start doing things that they shouldn't do,
Right.
right? That's when now our love, because I try to. In fact, just the other night I told my kids, "Hey, I love you unconditionally."
Mm-hmm.
And I do. Doesn't matter what they do. I'm gonna love them. I may not like what they do, but I want to let them know what I didn't know.
Right.
I didn't know that I was loved unconditionally until I met the Father, who now loves me unconditionally. I want them to know that they're loved unconditionally,
Right.
even when they screw up and they
Right.
mess up. Mom and Dad are always gonna love them unconditionally. But that's a tough thing for as a parent.
Absolutely.
Because now you have to worry about what other people think of your kids, and wow, look at your kid. But at the end of the day, one thing I realized too, there's no such thing as perfect parents,
No,
Yeah.
no.
and it doesn't matter how good my wife and I do our best to try to raise our kids, they're gonna screw up,
Right.
they're gonna mess up. Our ability to love them where they're at until they grow out of it, that's the
Right.
part
Yeah.
that where the challenge comes in.
Right.
As a parent, like it gets hard. You know what I mean? Because when you start seeing your kids do things like, "Hey,
Where did you learn that?
yeah, where'd you learn that from?"
Yeah.
And then sometimes the pride as parents, like, I don't want the world to see this,
Right.
because this is what we're good. It's supposed to be good examples of this, but at the end of the day, our walk, especially with God, it's not a perfect walk.
Right.
we have to show people that you're gonna screw up, but then you can also ask for forgiveness, and it's gonna be okay.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. How about you, Mario? How did you grow up?
No, just also probably very similar to you, Alex.
Okay.
Just obviously, not very healthy conditions. Kind of a lot of alcohol in the household.
Okay.
So I experienced a lot of that. I remember one time my father coming home and he was roughed up. I mean, there was like scorns on his sweater, and
my
his
goodness.
face was all dirty, and and I'm like sitting in the living room, and I'm like, "What happened?" And he said, "I fell in the sidewalk outside." And I said, and even though I'm like 4 or 5 years old, I'm like,
Right.
"There's no way you fell on the sidewalk outside."
Right.
And that's when I went. My mom's like, "Go to your room." I went to my room. I could hear him speak about how
Right.
he got in a fight with his brothers.
Right.
Literally his brothers. So, that was kind of seen. So till this day,
Yeah.
I chose, alcohol is not a big part of my life. You know what I mean? But, take the best and leave the rest.
Yeah.
Just kind of like the old saying goes that they asked these two brothers, how did you end up in jail?
Okay.
He says, well, I saw my father in and out of jail. And they asked the other
Oh my
brother, how did
gosh.
you become so successful? And
Right.
he says, well, I saw my father in and out of jail. So
Yeah.
it's always, perspective, how we look at this.
That's
Right.
good. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's big. That's big.
That's kinda how
Was
we
there a
are.
lot of respect in your household?
Yeah, because we had something called a chancla. Yeah. So that required a
helped.
lot of respect.
It helped.
Or at sometimes whatever my mom was holding, whether it was a broom, one time
Right.
she was cooking, she had a knife in her hand, and,
Right.
and I was about to get a whooping, and thank God my dad walked in at this time, and I said in Spanish, "She's trying to kill me, she's trying to kill me."
Yeah.
And my dad's like, "What are you doing?" So he
Right.
put the knife down. But she was cooking, it's not like
Right.
she was gonna kill me. But yeah, it was a brick, water hose, I mean, you name it, whatever they
Yeah,
had in their
yeah.
hands, it was gonna fly. Yeah.
So from parent to child, yes, there's always that respect. But what about with siblings? Because I remember, like with my sister, there was absolutely, and my brother, there was no respect.
Yeah.
But my parents never corrected it. They
Well-
just saw it. We could do it to them, but we can't do it to our parents.
Well, look, Alex, I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad it's being recorded. But again, very similar to the way you were raised,
Okay.
I was raised. So
Okay.
I had two sisters, and the same thing. Nothing was really corrected, but
Okay.
it actually hurt them. It hindered them.
Okay.
One of fence on the window because late at night she'd get out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But all that happens from like lack of discipline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So,
Yeah.
and the good book talks about, hey, if kids are out of line,
Yeah.
there's got to be some discipline and some spanking.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. So that never happened. But I mean, they're both great. My siblings are great today.
Yeah.
But I think they struggle a little bit because of that, the lack of discipline.
I see.
Yeah.
So because they never did that as a parent now, I think that if I ever see my kids arguing, like they have to respect each other, and I've noticed that Jenny's really good at that. I'll let it go. I'll count like 3, 2, 1, and then I'll talk to them because I'd rather them play, and then I'll talk to them once they're calmed down. No, Jenny lets them know when they're like at the peak. Like, why did you push her? You're not supposed to smack her, etc. And her to him. You're older. You're supposed to be the example. And so you see that communication there. It's so key because they know it's gonna come. If they're doing something wrong. And I think back and I'm like, man, what if my parents would have communicated with me on how to treat each other? And again, it's one of the things that's lacking.
Yeah.
David, did you have that type of communication?
I wanted to thank you for asking because
Yeah.
I'm bursting warmness. I didn't have that growing
Okay.
up. And my father, he did a great job for providing. We, like I said earlier, we always had a place to live, food to eat. And again, he was only he did the best that he could. So
Right.
now that I'm older as a father, I appreciate him for what he's done, but I also recognize that, he's only doing what he saw happen,
Right.
right? And just growing up in the house, there was a lot of yelling,
Okay.
and I recognize sometimes why I am the way I am.
Well, the environment.
Yeah, and I have to catch myself because sometimes, again, guys, I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
I would yell at my kids.
Yeah.
Sometimes, unfortunately, I would raise my voice even at my wife.
Okay.
then I would think, I'm like, those are the things that I hated about my dad, and I'm doing it, and I'm just doing the exact same thing. And growing up, and then my mom would let me get away with everything,
Yeah.
but just the way it was communicated. I mean, my parents did the best they could
Yeah.
with what they had, but that's what I want to become. Like I buy books on parenting and how to become a better husband,
Oh, wow.
because I know I got issues.
Yeah.
I do acknowledge that I have issues because of how I was raised,
Right.
but that doesn't mean I have to continue to bring those issues with my grandkids and my kids. I want to be a better example. My wife does a great job of that too.
Right.
We're both trying to be working on becoming better parents, just because of the environment, and it's supposed to get better
Right.
as we get older, from generation to generation.
Right.
Right? I want to make sure that our kids are exposed to better communication,
Yes.
because at the end of the day, our relationships are based on communication.
True.
If we don't communicate correctly, then that's when relationships go
Correct.
the opposite direction. So, but yeah, when you were talking to Mario, I was thinking about how, man, I heard a lot of yelling, I heard a lot of fighting.
Right. Right.
That's what we were exposed to. And then at the same time, a lack of discipline. I wasn't disciplined as much then.
Right.
So that's why sometimes I would never cuss at my parents.
Okay.
But sometimes I would challenge them by raising my voice.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you ever did that with your mom. I couldn't see you doing that with your mom, or even with your dad. So the difference in upbringing
Right.
because I see how my wife is with her mom. I mean, she absolutely worships her mom. She does stuff for her mom that I don't see very much what she does for her mom, how she treats her mom.
Right.
It's not something that we see very often.
That's right.
Right.
So
And how do you diffuse like a situation whenever you guys are talking to your children and it's hot? You guys wait. I mean, what do you guys do? Because for us, this is where I think, thank God, we found this business, because they always talk about, taking the positives
yeah,
and leaving the negatives. Whereas I could yell and get really loud and angry and be very negative,
yeah,
but I don't do that. I try
Yeah.
to make it positive.
Yeah.
At times I have to let them calm down.
yeah.
I'll wait and I'll talk to them at the
We
right
have to
time.
come down too.
Like, I'll tell you right now, my daughter, she's an emotional, very high. I mean, from scale of 1 to 10, she's like 11,
Mhm.
very emotional. So for her, I have to sometimes give her a day, and then I'll say something like, "Hey, let's go get some ice cream." And then once she gets in the car and she closes that door, we're starting our conversation,
Mm.
and she takes it in a little bit better.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So how do you do it with your children?
How about you, hon?
I'm the diffuser.
Yeah, she's the diffuser.
Yeah, what I've learned in our relationship and in our parenting, and my upbringing was totally different than y'all. Like, I'm the only child here that has come from divorced parents. All your
Okay.
parents are all still together.
Yeah.
My mom was married previously. My dad was married previously. They had a whole family. They divorced, married each other, and then divorced. So I'm the only child from their union, and I'm the youngest child by 13 years. So just total different dynamics. I was dealing with, a whole nother family on both sides as a child, and dealing with other people. So I love that, and that's one of the things that I wanted. I didn't want that. So when I married David, I told him he had two ways out of this marriage: death or I kill him. So that was the only way he was getting out. Either he died naturally or I killed him.
Oh my goodness.
But because growing up, my parents argued so much. My dad, loved my dad.
Yeah.
God rest his soul. He passed away last year. Love him. But my father was an alcoholic. My birth father was an alcoholic. Retired military, retired Campbell Soup. Very, very hardworking man, but he was an alcoholic. He drank every day. And so there was always an argument in my house. Every day they argued when I was growing up. My mom and dad argued every single day. And that trauma as a child, just having to listen to that every day, I knew when he came home there was going to be an argument over something.
Oh my gosh,
Wow.
you were ready.
Right? So it was like I was already ready for that to happen. And so when we would argue, all I could think about was the kids having to experience it.
Yeah.
And so even now today, when things start to get, if just because I had so much experience with it growing up and
Wow.
being on the other side of it and knowing, if we went to my uncle's house on the way home, mom and dad are gonna argue on the way home because he said something while we were there. Like,
Right.
you know, just knowing that
Yeah.
was going to be the situation.
Right. I was talking to Jen, and it's funny that you just said everything you just said because, and I'd like to know how you got to this point because you were doing things that you didn't like, and you wanted to you want to change. You didn't want it to continue. You wanted to break that generational curse, but there's something that led you to that. And I had the conversation with Jen where if you met everybody in Jen's family, she's the complete opposite. And she told me the same thing. I want it different. I want it better. But what do you think? What was that voice like, or it's just intuition? What do you think caused you to want to be different? Because most people, and by the way, that's rare. I don't meet too many people that want to change or be different. Most people fall victim to, well, you said it yourself when we started our conversation that you see the example and you want to follow that example. You want to yell, you want to hit, you want to do all the bad things. But in your case, you didn't see that as an example. You saw it as, this is wrong. I have to change it. What do you think made you that way?
Hurt. I didn't like the way I felt,
Okay.
and I didn't want my kids to feel that. So it was hurt. I think that's why I had our kids so close together too. Like the first two boys, it was like, okay, good. And I literally thought we were done. I actually felt bad when I got pregnant with Hannah because her and Josh were so far apart. And then I felt bad when I got pregnant with Matt because they were so far apart.
Yeah.
Because being that youngest child and having those experiences with my siblings and the lack of closeness and feeling like I was by myself.
Yeah.
So I always went back to how did I feel?
Yeah.
I didn't want them to feel how I felt.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So it was always that feeling of, man, I remember, how I felt when mom did this, or how I felt when dad did this, or how I felt when Sharon used to do this to me. So I always would think about how I felt and how I didn't want them to have those same experiences.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why when we got together, it was always a matter of how do I want to make this work.
Yeah.
Because the image or what I saw was running.
Yeah.
Or if, you don't like something, you just quit.
Right.
Right? It was never like, I never saw anyone, or I should say my parents, they weren't trying to work it out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It was always
Yes.
like, okay, I'm done. You're done. I'm
Yeah.
done. You know what I mean? That was the message I always saw was,
Easy way out.
yeah.
Easy way out.
Wow. Why do you think most people make the other decision?
It's easier.
Easier.
It's the easy way to go. Wow, that's big. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
It's amazing though when her family, though, even though in spite of the divorces, uh, being in her family, I'm extremely blessed to be a part of their family because it really taught me to forgive and to love. Being around her side of the family,
Yeah.
because growing up, it's just yell at each other and or whatever, and
Yeah.
be okay with it. But they can argue. The thing that I've learned, and I've been exposed to her family, they can argue about something and not
Yeah.
agree on something. And again, next week or next day, they're fine again. They're family
Yeah.
again, and it's genuine.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned that by being around their side of
Wow.
the family. That has helped me
We are
tremendously.
forgivers.
And that's
Right.
I think that's for a lot of people to forgive is like we talk about our business.
How do you think somebody could get to that point, though? Because some people don't even think about it. They're just reactors. They
Well,
just react. How
just-
can they get to that point? How did you get to that point? It
just
seems like if she was a big influence in your life in making those decisions based on what you saw,
yeah.
your experience. But
But
how does somebody that doesn't know how to get there get there?
for me is I believe you have to first experience forgiveness
Okay.
before you can forgive others. Because you can't give what you don't have.
So it's like hurt people hurt people.
Yeah. So that's that. Yes, similar scenario. Once I think that we can forgive ourselves for things,
Right.
then we can learn how to forgive others.
Right.
But if you can't forgive you, how are you going to forgive others?
You're right.
If you can't let yourself slide for the mistakes, how are you going to let other people slide with their
That's true.
mistakes? So just understand, hey, I'm forgiven, and not letting anyone else take that away from you.
Right.
I think that's the difficult part
Yeah.
because people will remind you of your mistakes
Right.
and what you've done wrong. But just that understanding is no one's perfect,
Right.
and we can get better every day. And I think we've been married almost 29 years this coming July, and I think that part of that is being able to forgive each other,
Yeah.
but also at the same time knowing that we're first forgiven first, so we can share that with each other.
That's huge. That's huge.
Well, I just want to add that what's helped us with our three daughters is, again, show more love and affection, perhaps not what we saw. Our love and affection was there's food on the table.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
paying the rent, aren't I? Right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so I'm going to work, right? So I remember starting this business and I got very emotional because every day I would give them all the kits. And I remember we were going to go to our first convention, like
Okay.
just the one that's around the corner. I said, oh my God, like we're going to break this cycle. Like we're going to go through a day where I don't give them a kid, right? So that was very emotional for me because, again, I didn't grow up like that. And just like Shanika and David are saying, and we wanted to kind of change it for the better and not remind us of those situations. So for me, that was very tough. But till this day, I try to make an effort with our daughters, and I think it's helped them perhaps to overcome, a lot of their insecurities by showing them more love. As much as I can, appreciate them, do more of, or tell them more of what they did that was right, as opposed to correct them and things that they did that was wrong. Because I think most people know what we did wrong. It's very easy to point a finger.
Yeah.
But I think with our girls, we call it a unit. We enjoy being with each other because of that.
Yeah.
That makes
And
sense.
Mario, your girls are very respectful, and one thing that I've acknowledged about them is that they're out there. Like they'll tell you how they feel,
Yeah.
and whatever conversation they're having, although they might not be directly talking to me, I can hear the side talks, and they're very direct.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And I think we all want our kids to be that way.
Yeah.
How do you think? Do you think that they saw that in you, or they're just naturally like that? Why do you think they're like that at this
Yeah.
stage?
It all starts like with Shanika's the environment
Yeah.
when they were little, and the household, and then every stage, every phase was different. Parenting, there was a different phase of parenting at an age. Like you have Isabella who's going to be 15.
Yeah.
Eli's 4. So right now, Eli, you're parenting Eli different than Isabella. Because
Absolutely.
they're different ages. So
Yes.
Your
our
patience has
daughters
grown.
are
Yes, it
are
has.
adults now, so it's a different type of parenting now that
Yeah.
we have. But it has helped out that, like Mario says, we are a unit. We do everything together. And
Right.
even though they're not with us that much today, now that they're adults, we still call each other. Well, hey, where are you at? We
That's
have the
awesome.
Life 360 right now.
Yeah.
You're just talking about that, making sure that that they know that we're there no matter
Right.
what.
Right.
And going back to disciplining our children when they were little, I remember, I don't know, Ariana was probably 4 years old, and Mario spanked her, and I said, "Why did you spank her? First, you have to tell her why you're doing it." I said, because you just don't spank somebody, and they don't know why. You have to tell them why you're doing it. Okay?
That's good.
Yeah, must have been something that I remember.
Yeah, she took her cousin's headphones.
Wow, you remember. How long ago was
But there's
that?
only a handful of times that I spanked them.
Wow.
That was one of them. Yeah. So her cousin ratted her out. Yeah. But just to kind of answer a great question too, Alex, is
Yeah.
what's helped us that's rubbed off with our kids. It's hanging out with amazing people like you and Jen
Okay.
and David and Shanika, where our girls have grown up in that kind of environment
Right.
with wholesome, godly people, awesome people, human beings like you guys. Growing up, I said to the team the other day, and again, all of that because of this great business,
Yeah.
the self-improvement,
Yep.
the not being normal,
Yep.
Yeah.
going out, and doing things that are abnormal a little bit, or just
Yeah.
going against the status quo.
Right.
And growing up, and one of my favorite things during the day is to drop them off at school or pick them up. That to me, I took joy in that. I was usually the one that would drop them off or pick them up because I would work on their thinking. And of course, that was our time for talking.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I enjoy doing with them, Alex, Shanika, and David, and Viviana's side too, obviously, is dropping them off.
Yeah.
And again, working on the insecurities. That's why it's so easy for them to have a conversation with an adult or share with you, Alex, how they
Right.
feel, or whatever. That be direct.
Yeah.
Because I would share with them every single day. Who knows what?
Yeah.
And then I have to answer back. Always win.
Oh,
Munoz
nice.
what?
Nice.
Always win. And it's Thursday. Munoz what? As they're walking out the car.
Yeah.
Always win. So that got ingrained into them, so obviously we kind of raised the bar there.
Yeah.
It was a little tough in high school because now, they care a lot what people think they're saying.
Yeah.
But I still did it. And sometimes they're like, Dad, my friends are watching. I'm going to get out of the car. You don't answer. Munoz what? I don't hear you.
Right.
And they'd stay quiet. I'd park,
Yeah.
and I'd get out of the car. I'm like, Munoz what?
Yeah.
In front of their friends. Okay, always win, always win. Okay?
They got the
But
point.
That's kind of that was our household.
So you were the loudest voice. in
Very
the-
loud.
Very loud.
Yeah, very loud.
Why do you think some people are not the loud voice in their children's ears, and they allow other people to raise their children?
Yeah, that's a great
Oh,
question.
that's big.
Yeah. I just want to add super quick on that. It's
Yeah.
just I think it's personality,
Yeah.
and a lot of it is just product of their environment.
Okay.
So we kind of emulate one of our parents, right?
Okay.
It's a mom, the dad, or sometimes we'll emulate a teacher. Yeah,
Yeah.
but usually, like Secrets of a Millionaire Mind talks about our blueprint comes from a mom or a dad. So
Absolutely.
perhaps if someone learned that from one of them, to be maybe submissive or maybe not voice themselves,
Yeah.
maybe that's kind of what they're talking about.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, and
Ditto.
what I mean too, maybe you could share on this, but like for example, I could think of like back in the days, like I told you guys, my mom would be home raising us.
Mm.
Today things are different. Incomes, inflation.
Yeah.
You have mom working and you have dad working. So who's raising these kids? Who's having these conversations with them? And I could easily tell you that if my mom wasn't an influence, I wouldn't be here right now. So again, if someone doesn't have that and they're not getting what's called coaching properly or having a loud voice that's a positive influence in their life, what can they do? Where should they go? What are the things that would help somebody in that area?
I'm a big believer in going to communities like church,
Okay.
or our Primerica community is a very
Okay.
strong, very positive community. But going to a place that's safe, where people can be exposed to positive
I see.
energy and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And I think for us, were either in church or in Primerica
Yeah.
communities.
Yeah.
And both those communities are very safe and very loving and
Right.
forgiving at the same time. You know, so I think those two communities are pretty safe. How about you?
I mean, I go back to that. You know, we hear that saying now: "If you were born poor, it's not your fault. If you
Yeah.
die poor, it's your fault."
Yeah.
I think at some point we all have to, no matter where you are in life, you have to identify what do I want,
Yeah.
and then you gotta seek that,
Yeah.
right? You gotta look for that. And so if you want to do better, right? If you want to be a better person, you
Yeah.
gotta figure out, okay, where do I need to put myself so that I can be a better person?
Absolutely.
Right? So you gotta go and you gotta find those resources and find those places. I go back, our youngest son now, he's 17. We go to church. We have a church. My brother's a pastor. But at our church, we don't have a strong youth program,
Yeah.
Okay.
right? We're strong for adults, but we don't have a youth program. So what did my 17-year-old think? He went and found one.
And
He
we
was
were
looking
open to
for
it.
it.
He
And
went
we
and
were
found
yeah.
one on his own.
Oh my. He was looking
And
for it.
he
Yeah.
went, not our coaching.
Yeah.
We didn't coach him to do that. He did it on his own. He went and found a church that had a strong youth program that he can get involved in, that he can go to, that he drives himself to,
Yeah.
that he shows up to.
He
that-
on time.
on time, on his own. I don't wake him up on Sunday mornings to show
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
But he did that at 17. So when we run into adults that say
Yeah.
they want to do better, they want better, they want to, they want to get better spiritually, or they want.
Yeah.
If my 17-year-old can go out there and find it on his own, we can go out there and do the same thing. It's out there. They're available,
Yeah.
right?
You're right.
Growth is available.
And he's also involved.
And he's
in
also
the
involved.
ministry.
And he did that on his own. So it's out there. If we want to do better, if we want to be better, there's podcasts. There's
Yeah.
we're doing right now. There's Joyce Meyer for us women,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
There's somebody for something. There's if you want to get better in your marriage. I mean, there's this guy called that he's a single man that wants to be married again. He was married before, and he started a podcast called Dear Future Wifey. Right?
Oh,
Dear
yeah.
Future
wow.
Wife, where he has married people come onto his podcast, or other single people that talk about relationship things and
Yeah.
marriage and all this kind of stuff, because he wanted to get better, right? So I just look at it, if we want to get better,
Yeah.
it's available.
Yeah.
We just gotta find it. We gotta go out there and do the work.
Yeah.
We gotta be willing to do the work, right?
So true.
I'm just a believer of that. When I'm struggling with something, I will go on YouTube, or I'll open my Bible, or I'll find something that can help me get better. Joyce Meyer said, people say that you say you want to get better, say, for instance, you want to get better with praying. Well, you don't open your Bible and look for, something on gluten. You look for,
Yeah.
you look for scripture on prayer.
Yeah.
So whatever it is that you want to get better with, you got to seek that source
Yeah.
and figure out, okay, what do I need to do to get better in this area,
Yeah.
right?
It's good.
But you have to have that desire.
You have to have that desire.
You know, they say one of the things we say in our office often is that there is no lack of opportunity, only lack of drive.
True. That is true.
You know, because there's resources today for relationships. We have more. There's podcasts. There's so many
Books.
positive books. There's so many positive resources available, but that individual have to they have
Come
to
from
want
within.
it,
Yeah.
right?
Gotta do the work.
Yeah, and that's the great thing is resources are available.
Yeah.
But someone has to they have to really want to change.
Right.
You know, that has to come within.
Yeah.
You know,
Being the loudest voice, it just made me think of like our kids when they were going to school. There were a few subjects that I didn't know they were being taught in public school, but Jen brought it to my attention, and she's like, "We got to pull them out of school." Right away, loudest voice in their head, right? She enrolled them into a Christian school, so
Mhm.
then, obviously there's an expense there, right?
yes.
But what is it worth for your children, to grow up, in an environment knowing that there's something better out there? The first thing I tell Jen is if we could help them, they're gonna grow up and one day help others.
Yes.
'Cause if they're good, you mentioned it. they're gonna have good friends.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's so big, even not just with children, but also us as adults. If we start hanging out with different kind of people and they're the loudest voice in our minds,
Yeah.
I mean, we'll mold into that too.
Yeah. That's right.
And sometimes it's very dangerous. But going back to the children, I'm so glad Jenny made that decision because it challenged them as well. Education nowadays isn't what it was before.
Not at all.
Back then you couldn't use an iPad or a calculator. Now you could use Google and a calculator now. So, what are you guys seeing as far as your kids? Because I still have Eli and he's little, and I feel like he's gonna be a challenge, like you said, later because he's so forthcoming. He's got a strong will, and anything he wants to do, we're at a point in our life where we could say yes.
Mm.
And you guys have older children, so how can you guys help us out in that area?
We homeschooled our children.
Nice, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, why did you make that
similar
decision?
Same thing with you guys. You saw some things that was taking place in the system that you didn't quite agree with. And as believers, my wife and I, there's certain values that we have that is being challenged in the open place,
Right.
place. So one particular day when our oldest son, she and I's oldest son was going into
He was going into seventh grade.
seventh
Okay.
grade, and we saw some
But
things.
backline on Sam. So our oldest son had a speech delay.
Mm.
Okay.
So he had a speech delay as a child, and so Sam didn't actually start speaking until he was 3. And so we had been in the public school system and in speech therapy and
Right.
all of
Big
that
part of
since
it.
Right.
he was 3 years old. So every year I had to advocate on his behalf. We had to go
I
through
remember that.
IEPs. We had to
Wow.
go through all these different things with him. So we did that from
And it was being
3 years
ignored.
old. Yeah, from 3 years old to 6th grade, we had done that.
Okay.
And he had went through struggles of teachers trying to tell him he couldn't do certain things, and then I would have to come in and advocate and say, no, he can do that.
Right.
It's just going to take him a little bit longer, right? So it was all this avocation that had
Yeah.
to take place for so many years, and then when we got to 7th grade, it was going to be 6 teachers as opposed to 1 teacher, and the world was changing.
Wow.
So there was a lot in that it got us to that point to make that decision. But now we had not just Sam in school, we had Josh in school, and Matt behind him. So
And there was an issue with Hannah too.
and then one of the teachers, because I didn't send my kids to preschool, so because she didn't go to preschool, one of the teachers told me she would never catch up. She would always be behind.
Yeah.
And told me I needed to send her to summer school. Well, she went to summer school going into the 2nd grade, and the 2nd grade summer school teacher said, why is she here? And I said, well, because her 1st grade teacher said that she
Yeah.
needed to be. He said, I don't need her. She doesn't need to be in summer school.
Yeah.
Right? So it was all of these things that were being told to our kids
Yeah.
and being put into their head that we made a decision to homeschool them, and what was going on in the world and where curriculum was going
Right.
and the changes that were happening. And it wasn't easy.
Because we were still building our business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it required time.
Yeah.
A lot of time.
For
A lot of time. It wasn't easy, but it was good for them. They were all together, so
Yeah.
they were still in a classroom. We were exposed to this company, so they were still always around people. We had your kids are going to be, goofy. They're not going to know how to
Yeah.
interact with people.
Yeah.
They're all that
get
kind of stuff.
labeled,
You
yeah.
know,
That's
all
far
the
from the truth.
all the negativity from parents or from
Yeah.
family members that told us that it didn't make any sense. Why would you do that?
Right.
But it was the right thing for us. It's not the right thing for everybody, but it was the right thing for us.
Right.
It was the right thing for us. And so, like, I'll have parents now that'll come to me and ask me about homeschooling. And I have moms say, well, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. Well, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
It is a commitment. It's a big commitment.
Yeah.
But it worked for us. It was the right thing for us.
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily the right thing for everybody, right? But again, we made that decision. And
Yeah.
it was a good decision for us.
Right.
I think the public schools today, Alex, are totally different right now.
Yeah. They are.
Especially, when our girls grew up, they went to a parochial private school, and we paid money for them, where Christ was the center of their
Yeah.
foundation, their
Yeah.
life. And they went to parochial school, all of them, until kindergarten to 8th grade. Our 2 oldest then went to high school, public
Yeah.
high school, but they knew already. I mean,
They had
the
a
foundation situation they already
Yeah.
had it. Alexa went to a private high school still, Christian high school still, for the 4 years. But
Yeah, I mean, obviously growing up with public schools, we saw a lot of that stuff that I probably shouldn't have seen, whether it's
Yeah.
fights or
Yeah.
you name it. You fill in the blank.
Yeah.
I mean, in middle school there was a place where if somebody was gonna fight,
Yeah.
we're like, okay, we're gonna meet behind the Circle K at this time. Everybody knew except the teachers and principals.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Where
Well, now it's on video.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, there
Yeah.
wasn't videos back then,
There
right?
wasn't.
But being that, like she said, our girls go
Yeah.
to a private or a parochial school, I never saw a fight. There's no graffiti. I'm
Right.
not saying they never fought. I'm sure they did.
Right.
In fact, one time, a quick story with DeAndrea, of course, right?
Hey, leave my D alone.
Yes, very vocal, right?
Yeah.
And principal calls me in or calls like, I gotta talk to you. I'm like, what happened? She's like, yeah, your daughter, wanted to start a fight with this other girl and blah
Yeah.
blah blah. So obviously communicating with her daughter, hey, what happened? She says, well, that girl says your dad's fat. And back
Yeah.
then I was a little heavier. Yeah.
Okay.
So DeAndrea didn't like it and told her some things about her dad.
Right.
But the teacher didn't hear the other girl tell DeAndrea about me. So I told the principal, look, I'm all for discipline. If
Yeah.
you're going to discipline my daughter, no problem, but you're going to discipline that other girl too.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to do that, so I said, if you don't, I'm going to take my daughter and all my kids out of this school.
Oh my
So their
goodness.
budget would have been hurt.
Absolutely.
And they were already hurt. In fact, the schools closed down because of the budget, by the way. So they ended up not disciplining my daughter, but I still had
Right.
to talk with her. Hey, there's a way to do things.
Yeah.
Don't worry, and I explained to her why that daughter said what she said and this and that. But I think communication, like you said earlier, Alex, is
Yeah.
key. But I think our daughters were in a cocoon the whole life because, God being, and we're not perfect, we're far
Right.
from it, but God being part of the center of their life.
Right.
Yeah.
With that cocoon you just mentioned, I had a challenge when Jenny wanted to send the kids to private school because to me it's like I don't know if you guys could relate, but growing up street smart is different from growing up not knowing what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
So my biggest fear was she's not going to be able to experience a fight, how to defend herself, how to talk to somebody, all the things that we learned the hard way, fighting behind a 7-Eleven. And I didn't want that for my kids. I wanted them to be street smart, aware. If there's a problem, for them to be cognitive and realize there's a problem and not be part of the problem. So she told me, well, that's what we're doing. And you guys just confirmed that. We are positive. And those things are happening or they're not happening, whether it's talking about family or, whatever they're doing in their life, we have to get in there and, kind of like fix the situation. Correct. I've always had a hard time because I was I'm wishing that it seemed like if they're angels. And what I'm seeing.
Oh, no.
And what I'm seeing.
Oh, no.
Right, Jen?
No.
But
we shouldn't have paid that.
I haven't seen or experienced what you guys have, so that's why I did want to know what's that foundation like at home with you guys, because we're looking forward to that. You said it's going to be a challenge. I haven't seen that yet, but I know it's around the corner.
Well, yeah, like I said earlier, what I wanted to say is that if we painted that picture that our kids were perfect, but they're not, but we're not perfect
It's
either
work.
as parents.
Yeah.
The Bible says, train a child in the way that they should go, and they will not depart. That doesn't mean that they don't lead,
Right.
but they're going.
Got
And
it.
so they may stray,
Yeah.
but they're going.
Yes.
And all we can do as parents is pray.
Yeah.
We just have to pray and trust God. We taught them the right.
Yeah.
We did that.
And
Yeah.
we see the best
Yeah.
in all of them.
Yeah.
Awesome.
In spite of, like today, like I have a couple of tattoos, but now our oldest son has a lot of,
Yeah.
right? And then some people are like, man, what happened to your son?
Yeah.
More other,
Yeah.
we have
Yeah,
some
of course.
people in the,
Yeah.
in the business like,
Yeah,
hey,
absolutely.
Yeah.
but then I don't see that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
see my son.
Yeah.
He's always going to be my son.
Absolutely.
And those markings doesn't make him. That's just part of what he
Absolutely
wanted to do,
Yes.
right? And
I had a challenge
Yeah.
at first.
Yeah.
I did. I had a major.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, but my challenge with it is different than his challenge with it, right?
Yeah.
So he was getting all of these tattoos and doing all of this during the time when George Floyd was, had died and all this
Yeah.
stuff was going on,
Yeah.
and just he's mixed. He's half Filipino and he's half black. But the world doesn't see him as Filipino. The world
Right.
sees him as black.
Yeah.
And so my challenge with that was different than his dad's challenge with it. Is that you know, you're now marking yourself, right?
Yeah.
So when you're seen, I said you get pulled over by the police, baby. I need you to keep both hands on the steering wheel. I need
Yep.
you to look straight ahead. I need you to say yes sir, no sir. Like all of these thoughts were going into my head. So my challenge with that was mostly for his safety,
Yes.
not so that I was disappointed. I was worried about his safety,
Yeah.
right? And so now I'm over it. Now my
Yeah.
daughter has all these darn tattoos too. So it's like
Yeah.
I'm just,
Yeah.
and
But-
Nathan
but
talked
it-
me into getting tattoos.
You
But-
got one. He has one little one. He has one little one.
but it's different. But in the beginning, I did. I had
Yeah.
challenges with it more so for his safety than for him marketing.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But again, our kids have to go through those
Yes.
so that even we as parents
Yes.
have to learn
Yep.
how
Yeah.
to
Yep.
how do we respond to that,
Yeah.
and how do we teach them? How can you ever teach anyone anything
Yep.
Right.
unless they go through something?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we try as
Yeah.
parents. We want our kids to grow up perfect. But
Right.
That's not ideal,
Nope.
Yeah.
and they can't learn through a perfect life.
Nope.
Yeah.
And they can't necessarily, like David's always telling the boys, you guys need to learn from my mistakes. And I have to remind them, they can't learn from. There's certain things,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
but they're gonna have to make their own
That's
mistakes.
They're their own.
And
Yeah.
that's hard for me as a
Yeah.
dad.
Their own identity. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and that's
'Cause
a
I made
battle.
some bad, terrible
That is a
mistakes.
battle between he and I. If we're gonna
Yeah.
sit here and we're gonna be transparent,
Yeah.
that is one of our biggest battles. Is that he
Sure.
wants to save them from
Yeah.
everything, and I'm in a position where we can't.
Yeah.
Like they're gonna have
She
to
is
go
better
through that.
at that.
Like I'm like, babe, they're gonna have to have relationships.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to do that. They're gonna have to go. They're gonna go through heartbreak. I know
Yeah.
you don't want them to, but they need to go through that.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's a challenge for us.
Yeah.
Is us understanding. I'm trying to be understanding towards his feelings. He's got to be understanding towards mine. He tells you, well, you're just a mom. That's
Yeah.
how moms think. I'm a dad.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just in a place where I understand. Yeah, they're gonna get their hurt. Their
Yeah.
first love is not gonna be their only love.
Yeah.
Right? As much as we want that for them, chances are that's probably not how it's going to
Yeah.
be. I'd rather them get it over with so
Yeah.
that they can find the right one, right? And he's just like, well, no,
Yes.
babe. Again, that's a
Yeah. My grandma, she was really wise, and she had this conversation with me about making everybody feel as if they're part of a family. And, when
That's
you're
good.
young, you don't realize what a wise person is telling you. But as I got older, I understood. I thought she meant like me dealing with my family, like, her, my brother. But no, my grandmother was that person that everybody would go visit just randomly. She was like the glue that kept everybody together. She has 6 children. Out of the 6, only 2 talk, and the other 4 don't because she's not around. She was the glue. Thanksgiving, she was everything. She was the glue. And so it was deeper. That conversation was deeper than anything because what she meant it was make even spouses feel they're part of the family. There shouldn't be any issues. And
That's
I
big.
go back to that
That's
because
big.
you just mentioned about your son. You could have easily been really upset. Let's just say the worst.
Right.
Where would he be at today
Right.
if you wouldn't have made the decision? So we have to love no matter what, knowing that we're still gonna protect him.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I got from what she told me, and it just it
big.
came back to me right now.
Yeah.
Man, that conversation stuck with me for a reason. Usually things go in one ear and they go out the other. Not that one.
Yeah.
But Alex, you just sowed a seed into all of us.
Yeah.
Because you brought up a very good point. You said even make spouses feel like they're part of the family.
Absolutely.
And that's a big thing that we all. That's one thing that I was saying. My mom's created a lot. So one of the things that stands out is how she definitely. I don't think. Sometimes I tell her, I think you love David more than you love me.
She treats me.
Like she treats him as if he is her son. my sister-in-law, my
That's
brother's
awesome.
wife, she treats her as if she is her daughter.
Yeah.
Like there's no,
She
she
calls me
doesn't
son.
take
She calls her
sides.
daughter.
She doesn't take sides with
Yeah.
us. She doesn't make she doesn't make my sister-in-law feel like she's a
Right.
daughter-in-law. That's her daughter, right? And I think that that is another reason why David and my
Yeah.
sister-in-law are so integrated into our family.
Yeah.
Is because of my mom.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do genuinely feel like her children.
Wow. That's big. That's big.
Her love for us is strong.
You know, and even with our kids, like that conversation she had was, it went further because even I'll take time and I'll just look at Isabella, my daughter, and I'll say, she doesn't look good. Something's wrong. And then she loves road tripping. Right? So randomly we'll just, okay, guys, get a duffel bag, let's go, and she'll be happy.
Oh, wow.
You know, my son, he's quality time. He just likes doing things one on one. You know, so same thing. You know, so because of that conversation, they were different in so many different ways. But
Yeah.
you know, we had to kind of like do those things even though we don't want to do them.
Yeah.
Yeah, to make sure that you know, that conversation just was forever. It's always
Yeah.
still in my mind. You know, so
We'll enjoy every moment.
Yes.
exactly.
Woo,
Because I
Jesus,
remember
yes.
when our little ones were 4 years old
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
soon to be 15.
yeah.
They're not
Enjoy
gonna
it.
have those moments
They
again.
go by like
Yes.
Yeah, enjoy them.
And in closing, guys, maybe you guys could help us. But here's a question that we're doing things that a lot of people can't do. Spending time with our children, sending our children to private
Yeah.
school, homeschooling your
Yeah.
children. I don't hear that too much.
Yeah.
Okay, now, you know, obviously, I know you guys are in business for yourselves,
Yeah.
and that's helped you guys. So, you know, as far as resources, money, you know, making the decision of one day be in a position you're in, there's people out there that want to do that too. And I thank God, I thank my wife, I thank, you know, my family for supporting me. But going into business was the best thing I did because of those reasons. It wasn't for me, it was for them. You know, how do you guys feel about that?
There's no other way for us, you know, because
Yeah.
business is the only thing that allows you to have leverage over it.
Okay.
Because, you know, if we had regular jobs, then our incomes would depend 100% solely on our time. And it's just a math thing.
Yeah.
You know, if we have 8 to 10 hours in the day,
Yeah.
and if all of our income is dependent on us working,
Yeah.
then that means we have limited income.
Yeah.
In business, being in business for yourself is the only thing that allows you to leverage your time. And being able to leverage your time is what allows us to spend time with our kids.
Right.
When we spend more time with our kids than I believe our parents did,
Yeah.
you know, and that had a major impact, I believe, with our children.
Right.
And we would do it 10 times over again.
Yeah.
The amount of work that was required initially, it is a lot more work.
Yeah.
You know, because you have to, you know, you just can't go around it. It's
Yeah.
non-negotiable.
Yeah.
But I would do it again and again and again. Us being able to work together, you know, in business
Yeah.
has allowed us to obviously provide leverage, and that leverage has allowed us to have.
That's awesome. What
Well,
you
first
guys-
of all, whoever sent you guys this video, make sure you reach out to them because this is the best opportunity in the world, right?
Absolutely.
100%.
But you know, just like David said, is the leverage that we had.
Yeah.
You know, the quality time because I used to be a UPS driver. My wife was a registered nurse. She worked a night shift, and I
Yeah.
worked a day shift, and we kind of
Wow.
high-fived each other on the way to
Yeah.
work. We met in 1987. We're high school sweethearts. We wanted to be with each other, not away from each other.
Yeah.
When we both had jobs, we were kind of going in opposite directions, not being with each other. And this is even before kids.
Right.
So we've always thought about, like, how can we start our own business? We just had no direction,
Yeah.
right? No mentorship, none of that. Where this business has allowed us to have all that, where we could be with each other all the time. And,
Yeah.
and for us, we enjoy that. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, sometimes we get in each other's nerves like everybody else, right? But we
Yeah.
enjoy having lunch together. We enjoy
Absolutely.
being with our daughters as we're raising them up, right?
Right.
You know, taking them to school, helping them with their homework, you know, having dinner at 4 o'clock as opposed to a normal traditional family at 7 or 8
Yeah.
o'clock,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
things are different. Yes, they are. But if, you know, you guys want that quality time, Obviously, money is up there too, right?
Yeah.
Financially, you guys want to,
Especially in today's world.
in today's
Yeah.
world, we
Inflation's
need
through the roof.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's
Right.
true.
So
You're
that's
right.
what we wanted to be, or that's what we liked about the business, to be
Yeah.
with each other, meet amazing human beings just like all you guys. To us, that's important.
Right.
Yes.
Priceless.
The friendships, yes,
Mhm.
especially
Yeah.
your wife.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
you- David and Shanika. I mean,
Yeah,
we're all
we
together.
do. We
Yeah.
are spoiled in the sense that Primerica, our business has allowed us to develop great, strong, meaningful relationships.
Absolutely.
Some
Yeah.
great